LT was a bright summer morning when John stepped outside to water his plants. He noticed the sunlight streaming over his yard, highlighting the thick, green blades of grass that had grown just a little higher than usual. To him, it looked healthy and alive. To his kids, it was the perfect soft patch to play barefoot in. To his wife, it was simply home. But to the HOA, it was a violation. Later that afternoon, as John returned from work, he saw a white paper flapping on his front door. His heart sank even before he read it. The bold letters screamed, "Violation notice, grass height exceeds HOA standards. $500 fine." He couldn't believe his eyes. $500? For grass? He muttered, shaking his head. He called to his wife, holding up the notice. "Can you believe this? We're being fined because I didn't mow the lawn for 1 week." His wife sighed, frustrated. "This is getting ridiculous. It's just grass, John. Who cares if it's a little taller?" That evening, John walked down the street to clear his mind. He noticed something. His neighbor, Mrs. Lee, had a similar paper stuck to her door. Curious, he knocked. When she answered, she looked upset. "Did you get fined too?" John asked. Mrs. Lee nodded. "Yes, they fined me because I had a few weeds in my garden. Can you imagine? $300 for weeds." She shook her head in disbelief. A few houses down, Mr. Patel had also received a notice. His crime was having a few yellow patches in his front yard. One by one, John realized almost the entire block was under attack. At the local park that weekend, the neighbors gathered, each sharing their frustration. Sarah, a mother of 2, said, "My kids were crying because I told them we might not be able to afford the HOA fine, all because our grass was a little patchy after the heat wave." Another resident chimed in, "This is not about maintaining beauty. This is about control and money. They're bleeding us dry." The group nodded in agreement. The tension escalated when John received a second notice the following week. This time, the HOA threatened legal action if he didn't pay the fine immediately. Enraged, John decided he would not back down. He began researching his rights, reading stories of other neighborhoods where HOAs had overstepped. What he discovered shocked him. Countless cases across the country where homeowners were fined thousands of dollars for petty violations, from the color of their fence to the type of flowers planted in their yard. Fueled by anger and determination, John prepared to confront the HOA at the next community meeting. The night of the meeting, the hall was filled with tense energy. The HOA board sat at the front table, led by Mr. Stevens, the stern president who seemed to enjoy the power of the gavel a little too much. The meeting began with routine announcements, but when John stood up, the room fell silent. Holding the notice in his hand, his voice rang out, $500. That's what they think a week of tall grass is worth. To them, it's a rule. To me, it's extortion. Gasps filled the room. Mr. Stevens banged his gavel. Order. These rules are in place to maintain property values. Without them, our community would look like chaos. John took a step forward, his voice firm. Property values? Do you think children playing on green grass lower property values? Do you think a few weeds make us less of a community? What lowers value is living under fear. Fear of walking outside and finding another fine taped to your door. Fear that no matter how hard you work, someone with a clipboard will decide you're wrong. That is not community, that is control. The crowd murmured in agreement. Mrs. Lee stood up next. Her voice trembled but grew stronger with every word. "I've lived here for 20 years. This neighborhood used to feel like home. Now it feels like a prison where we're punished for every mistake. I am tired of living in fear." The room erupted with applause. Mr. Stevens slammed his gavel again, his voice rising. "The rules are the rules. If you don't like them, you can leave." But this time, his words no longer held power. Mr. Patel shouted back, "We're not leaving. We built this community. We are the community, and we will not be silenced." The atmosphere shifted. For the first time, the HOA board looked nervous. People who had stayed quiet for years were now speaking up, one after another. A father with young children said, "I work 2 jobs to provide for my family, And now you're telling me that if I don't mow my lawn on time, I don't belong here? Enough is enough. John raised his hand for silence. His voice echoed with determination. Grass can't define who we are as a community. What defines us is how we care for each other, how we raise our families, how we create memories. We demand change. We demand fair rules. The crowd began chanting, "Fair rules! Fair rules! Fair rules!" The HOA board members whispered among themselves, clearly rattled. Finally, Mr. Stevens, his face red with frustration, conceded, We will review the rules. We will consider adjustments." Cheers filled the hall. For the first time in a long time, the homeowners felt victorious. They had stood up against unfair power and they had won. The following week, the neighborhood looked brighter. Lawns still varied in height. Some had patches, some had weeds, but there was laughter, there was joy, and there was unity. John stood outside, mowing his lawn not because he feared punishment, but because he wanted to. As his kids played nearby, his wife smiled, saying, "You did it. You reminded everyone what really matters." The narrator's voice closed the story. Rules can guide us, but when they are used as weapons, they destroy the very fabric of community. Sometimes it takes just one brave voice to spark a revolution. In this neighborhood, grass didn't just grow, courage did. On the screen, bold words appeared. HOA tried to find families for grass, but the people fought back.